2022 saw Europe's largest military mobilization since the Second World War when Russia invaded Ukraine.
"48 hours after announcing that it is looking to acquire FTX, Binance has walked away from the deal.
It was dubbed the mother of all IPOs, Life Insurance Corporation, making its debut on the Lal Street, becoming the fifth most valued Indian listed entity.
Another major headline of 2022 was the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the UK's longest-serving monarch. She died at the age of 96 after reigning for 70 years.
What are we ready for? Rishi! What are we ready for? Rishi!
Rishi Sunak fans gathered outside Parliament on Tuesday to celebrate his prime ministership in the good old Indian way.
Over 183,000 people have been handed the pink slips so far in 2022. From the war in Ukraine to a meltdown across cryptocurrencies, from the death of Queen Elizabeth to a man of Indian origin becoming the British Prime Minister, 2022 has been an eventful and challenging year. Good evening. Thanks for joining us on the last edition of India Business Hour for the year. Here's a look at the top stories this evening. The Sensex and Nifty end 2022 with 4% gains. With this, the stock markets have gained for 7 consecutive years. The PSU Bank Index is the top performer with 71% gains. Nifty IT is the worst performer, losing 25%, marking the biggest fall since 2008. The Indian rupee loses over 11% to the US dollar in 2022. This is the biggest annual decline since 2013. Concerned about countries like Vietnam and others benefiting from the supply chain shifting out of China, the Indian government considers reviewing its stance on Chinese investments. Sources say many global companies are keen to manufacture in India but want to continue existing partnerships with Chinese companies as well. That's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. India's electronics industry says the current tariff structure is hurting competitiveness against Vietnam and Thailand, calls for an overhaul, also seeks a 5-year extension of current incentives with an outlay of 10,000 crore rupees. Oil manufacturing activities suspended at the Noida plant of Marion Biotech after Uzbekistan claims a cough syrup made by the company led to the death of 18 children. Sources say authorities have found lapses in manufacturing practices. Samples of the syrup are being tested to check for the presence of toxins. The government hikes the small savings rate by over 1% for post office time deposits. Rates for senior citizens savings scheme, monthly income savings scheme and others have also been hiked. Hate is public, love is private, says Baiju Ravindran, the founder of edtech company Byju's, admits that 2022 has been a rocky year and the company is working very hard to achieve profitability in 2023. China's COVID wave sparks a scramble for medicines as people queue up outside pharmacies. Hospitals are overwhelmed in some cities with patients being treated at parking lots. Experts estimate 9,000 people could die every day as the virus rips through the population. Residents of Kyiv dash towards bomb shelters after Russia launches multiple drone attacks allegedly targeting infrastructure. China's Xi Jinping promises to increase strategic cooperation with Russia after a phone call with Vladimir Putin. Indian cricketer Rishabh Pant injured after his car crashes into a divider near Uttarakhand's Roorkee. India's cricket board says Pant suffered cuts to his forehead and a ligament tear in his right knee, but his condition is stable. Football legend and the only player to win 3 World Cups, Pelé dies at the age of 82. Brazil declares 3 days of official mourning. Well, let's start with the market action. We saw a last hour fall that meant that the Sensex and the Nifty ended the last trading day of 2022 with marginal losses. Financial stocks dragging the indices lower, even as midcaps managed to buck the trend for the year, though. Both the Sensex and the Nifty have gained just under 5%. This is the 7th consecutive year of gains for the markets. But this is the first time since 2018 that both major indices have clocked returns in single digits. Mangalam joins us to wrap up the year that was on the Lal Street and explains how India has fared compared to the rest of the world. Mangalam.
How did we fare against the world? We were standing tall out there as well. The Indian markets did a 5% gain as against the Brazilian markets just under 5%. And we far outperformed developed markets, the likes of Dow Jones, Hang Seng, as well as NASDAQ, all of them. NASDAQ was down 33% in 2022. But we also saw weakening in the currency because of the Fed rate hikes, etc. The USD versus INR pair the rupee depreciated by about 11%. So compare it in dollar terms, we actually had a negative return of 5.5%. There was massive FII selling, right? 2.75 lakh crores. That's the amount that FII sold in 2022 in our cash markets. The domestic institutional investors, the resilient ones, bought 2.73 lakh crores. If you just take a look at the way the FII sold, this is the highest that we've seen in a calendar year in the history of our markets. So in light of that, how did the other indices fare? The Nifty Bank was a strong outperformer, 21.5% higher. It was a weak year for the broader market, so the Midcap index just managed to close in the green, but the Nifty small cap was down by 14%. Let's drill it down to individual sectors. It was the year of PSU banks, 70% higher on that index. The metals grew about 22% at an index level, but it was a fair amount of weakness for the pharmaceutical pack and the IT pack, one of the weakest years that we've seen for the IT pack in the last many. Individual stocks, the latest entrant onto the Nifty was its top performer as well. Adani Ent did 125% in terms of gains. ITC got the top honors board as well. A lot of jokes notwithstanding, this year was the year of ITC with a 54% gain out there. Coal India up around 52% as well. A lot of the old power companies came back. NTPC up 34%. In terms of other underperformers this year, however, the IT pack, like I said, stood out. Wipro leading the way down. 45% cuts out there. Tech Mahindra down 43% as well. Divi's Labs did not do too well either. And HCL Tech Infosys down 19 to 21 odd percent. This year was the year of PSU banks. Like I said, 144% gain for UCO Bank. Canara Bank was up around 60 odd percent as well. SBI 33%. In terms of other sectors that did well, it was the defense stocks. Mazagon Dock almost 200% higher on that one. If you invested your money at the start of the year in Garden Reach, you would have doubled it. BEL itself would have given you around 43% in terms of returns. But that's not all. We had some other mid-cap gainers as well. Indian Hotels, 75% higher. TVS Motors zoomed ahead, 73%. Cummins and Federal Bank up anywhere between 40 to 66% too. In terms of losers, though, we had the mid-cap IT names, Mphasis, FirstSource, Birlasoft. All of them would have halved your money. So would IEX, in fact, from the start of this year, down 44%. We were coming off a COVID year, so we saw some declines in all these diagnostic companies as well. Metropolis, Dr. Lal, falling anywhere between 40 to 60 odd percent. And this was also the year where we saw all the new age businesses decline, and how? A big cut, anywhere between 50 to 60% on Paytm, Zomato, Nykaa, PB Fintech, Delivery, even car trade was down 45%. But let's end on a positive note. There were a lot of gainers from the broader markets. Adani Power up almost 203%, NDTV 210%. It was the year where sugar did well as well, 240% for Ugar Sugar, and FACT was up 180%. So that's the year that was 2022, an eventful one for the markets.
Mangalam, many thanks for joining us. As he was pointing out, 2022 ending in the green for the markets. But can this winning run extend into 2023? Prashant is standing by with some interesting historical data. 7-year H or 8th wonder, Prashant?
This is the best 7-year streak that we've had ever in the history of Nifty. That's basically the headline, really. We've never had this before, except the 2002 to 2007 period. This was a 6-year period when the Nifty was up every year. And of course, then there was the 2008 global financial crisis crack that happened. The market lost between 50 and 60 odd percent. This is data all the way from 1991. I mean, actually, Nifty data started publishing only from 96, but we've got time series available all the way going back 1991, and that's why we are saying 32 years. This is 91 with a 4-year gap, 95, 99, 2003, just to give you a flavor. And 2002 marks 7 years of straight gains. As I said, the last 6-year winning streak, which is the best ever before the current one, is between 2002 and 2007. Now, let's come to a bit of forward-looking, right? For the Nifty to do well in 2023, to do really well in 2023, or even be in the positive territory, it'll have to be the 8th straight year. It has never happened before, right? So that is the first kind of, you can look at it as a hurdle, you can look at it as a challenge, but it's not happened before. Starting valuations are a little higher. This is 1 year forward price to earnings multiple for the Nifty. And the average for the last 10 years. We are starting at about 19 times. I've rounded this off. Last 10-year average is about 17 odd times or so. So starting valuations may be a little high. and now look at the outperformance. The last time, actually the only time, the Nifty outperformed the Nasdaq by over 25% before before 2022 was in 2007, when we had a 25% outperformance, right? This year, the outperformance is 28%. It's even bigger. So, we may kind of mope about the fact that 2022 has been a tough year, but compared to global markets, we've done very, very well. And then there is the pre-election year curse, if you want to call it that. This is 2018, 19, we had an election high to the close. Basically, the high that year to the close that year, the Nifty lost about 8%. 2013, 14 was the election. I mean, a minor cut. 2008, of course, was the global financial crisis. 2003 was interesting because the Nifty lost 15% in the first 4 months to the lows in April that year, and then it rallied over 100% to close the year out in pretty good fashion, right? But more often than not, pre-election years have been down years from the high to the closing of that year. Now, as I said, all of this data, the fact that we may be starting at a higher valuation, or this has not happened before, or there is global outperformance, does not sort of make it so that we cannot have another good year. It is possible. But I think, as the famous legendary investor Warren Buffett once asked, what is the key secret to a happy marriage? His answer was low expectations. So I want to use that terminology. We've had a decent year in the face of a tough global environment. We've outperformed handsomely, and I think it would be a good year if you kept expectations low and came out in pretty good shape by the end of 2023. Back to you.
All right, temper expectations as we head into 2023. It has been a good run for our markets. Prashant, many thanks indeed. Into the currency market now, 2022 has seen the rupee depreciate over 11% against the dollar. This is the Indian rupee's biggest annual decline since 2013. The rupee finished the year at 82.70 against the greenback, down from 74.30 in 2021. Meanwhile, the dollar index is headed for its biggest yearly gain since 2015. Now on to some macro data. The government has hit 59% of its full-year fiscal deficit target in the first 9 months of this financial year. Fiscal deficit from April to November stood at around 9.8 lakh crore rupees as compared to nearly 7 lakh crores in the previous year. This is because gross tax collections dipped slightly in November. Tax revenues in the first 9 months of FY23 rose marginally to nearly 18 lakh crore rupees compared to just over 15 lakh crore rupees last year. The production of 8 crore infrastructure sectors grew by 5.4% in November due to a low base. The output of the 8 sectors had grown by less than 1% in October. 6 of the 8 sectors contracted in November as compared to the previous month. Coal production grew by more than 12%, while steel production grew by nearly 11%. After close to 4 years, the government has hiked the small savings rates by over 1% for post office term deposit. Rates for senior citizens savings schemes, monthly income savings scheme and others have also been hiked by 20 to 40 basis points. However, rates for PPF and Sukanya Samriddhi schemes remain unchanged. The big story this evening, the Indian government is weighing a potential review of its stance on investments from China. The government is concerned about countries like Vietnam and others benefiting from the supply chain shift from China. Government sources say global companies are keen on investing in manufacturing in India, but they do want to continue their existing partnerships with Chinese companies as well. Parikshit joins us now with the exclusive details. Parikshit, what is the government considering?
We're learning from sources that the government is concerned about countries like Vietnam benefiting from China Plus One strategy and is now mulling a shift in strategy, a recalibration, in fact. The centre is reviewing its stance on Chinese investments to ensure global companies relocate to India. Many global manufacturers want to make in India but want to continue joint ventures with existing Chinese partners. Sources say Apple is keen on making iPads in India but wants China's BYD, Apple's main iPad assembler, to be allowed to ink a joint venture with an Indian entity. Government may consider allowing BYD to ink a JV with an Indian company. Investments and joint ventures with Chinese companies has seen a sharp slowdown since India imposed restrictions in April 2020. We're learning that government may consider allowing Chinese investments and joint ventures for intermediate stage products where India does not currently have technological expertise. Recently, 13 to 14 joint ventures with Chinese companies were considered for mobile phone and electronics manufacturing. This comes in the backdrop of Vietnam emerging as a top alternative to China in high-tech electronic manufacturing. Vietnam is already Apple's 6th biggest supplier after China, Japan, US, Taiwan and South Korea. Google is considering shifting production of Pixel 7 from China to Vietnam. Samsung recently said it will be investing $3.3 billion in semiconductor manufacturing in Vietnam. Looking at recent trends, India does not want to lose out on companies seeking alternative manufacturing destinations. Former Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog, Rajiv Kumar, believes there is no reason for India to keep Chinese investments at bay.
Chinese companies, China itself is huge capital surplus. They keep exporting this surplus abroad, and I think see no reason at all for us not to have these joint ventures and invite investment from Chinese companies. Because I think it's important to have them put their money in the ground here, because that will also benefit our overall relations. I've always argued to keep our security relations and our economic relations with China separate, because there is no reason for the Chinese investment to go to all other Asian economies. We can and we should give Vietnam a run for its money.
So a possible review of the Indian government's position on investments from China on the table at this point in time. And speaking of Vietnam, electronic makers in India have called on the government for an overhaul of the current tariff regime. The industry believes the current tax structure is hurting competitiveness and giving an advantage to countries like Vietnam and Thailand. Ashmit is standing by with a budget list from the electronic sector. Ashmit.
Well, there's a long list of demands that has gone to the Finance Ministry, but just to highlight the key takeaways, as far as the spec scheme is concerned, the sunset clause is March of next following year. Under the scheme, the government provides financial incentives of 25% on capex. The industry now is seeking an extension of the scheme by 5 years with an additional outlay of 10,000 crore rupees. Further, the industry has red flagged what it calls the tariff structure and says that there is a need for overhauling this tariff structure because it is making India uncompetitive as compared to some geographies such as Vietnam, Thailand and Mexico. Staying on the taxation front, the industry body also, in fact, points out that there are concerns with respect to input tax credits. Large amounts of funds are stuck there, which causes a liquidity crunch for the industry. Also, that there are a large number of pending cases and that there needs to be some form of alternate dispute resolution to escape these anomalies here. As far as specific demands that are being made, well, there are cuts in custom duties that are sought for a whole host of key products and key components in electronics, but importantly, a customs duty of 20% is sought to be cut, especially as far as high-end phones or phones costing above 20,000 a piece. Also on the GST front, they are pointing out that mobile phones should not see a levy of 18%, but should be cut down to 12% as it's slowing down the Digital India mission.
Ashmit, many thanks for joining us. And it has been a tumultuous year for EdTech unicorn Byju's with layoffs and widening losses. The company's founder, Baiju Ravindran, addressed some of these concerns in a letter to his employees. He said, and I quote, "After many rocking years, we needed a rocky year to pave the way for our long-term success and resilience," end of quote. Speaking about growth, Baiju Ravindran said the macroeconomic changes of 2022 meant that the firm had to embark on the path to profitability this year itself and are working hard to achieve this in 2023. On layoffs, the company said that it is his most painful decision, but added that 2023 will see the company hiring an additional 10,000 teachers. Ravindran also said, and I quote, "Hate is public, love is private. We are inundated by this negativity because we know the truth. We are undaunted by this negativity because we know the truth." The government is yet to clarify on the Vodafone Idea equity conversion delay, even as the telecom company continues to gasp for survival amidst an erosion of its subscriber base. Now, all the necessary approvals, including the Finance Ministry's nod, were in by July. The file is pending consideration at the Telecom Department. No clarity yet on any further movement. Back home, the Union government has directed Marion Biotech to halt the production of all medicines. The Noida-based pharma company is currently in the dock after the Uzbekistan government claimed that 18 children out of 21 who consumed the cough syrup manufactured by the company had died. Abhimanyu Sharma gets us more.
Marion Biotech has been asked to suspend all production at its Noida-based facility. The first round of collection of samples had taken place on the 27th of December. The samples were sent to a Chandigarh-based laboratory for examination. The second round of inspection had taken place yesterday. Any further action will be taken by the central or state drug regulatory authorities based on the results of the test reports of the samples which were earlier collected. The central and state drug regulators had earlier found deviations from the rules and regulations on manufacturing practices. A show cause notice is likely to be issued to the company. The company, in all likelihood, will get a time of 10 to 15 days to respond to the notice. It remains to be seen what is going to be the result of the test reports, based on which any further action will be initiated, since the Uzbekistan government had claimed that there was a presence of ethylene glycol in the said cough syrup, which had led to the loss of 18 lives in the Central Asian country.
Indian cricketer Rishabh Pant was injured after his car crashed into a divider near Uttarakhand's Roorkee. India's cricket board has said that Pant suffered cuts to his forehead, a ligament tear in his right knee, but his condition is stable. He's currently undergoing treatment at a hospital in Dehradun. Prime Minister Modi's mother, Hiraben Modi, passed away at a hospital in Ahmedabad today. She was close to 100 years old. Her cremation took place in Gandhinagar. Prime Minister Modi performed the last rites. Leaders from across the political spectrum have offered their condolence. Football legend and the only player to win 3 World Cups, Pele, died at the age of 82. Brazil has declared 3 days of official mourning. We leave you with some iconic images of the man many considered the greatest footballer ever. We're back after a short break.